Well, the other big international story we're following, India is launching a high-level inquiry into the stunning allegations raised yesterday in a U.S. indictment. American prosecutors allege an unnamed Indian government official was linked to multiple assassination plots, which includes the June assassination of Canadian Sikh separatist leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
As regards the case against an individual that has been filed in a U.S. court, allegedly linking him to an Indian official, this is a matter of concern. We have said, and let me reiterate, that this is also contrary to government policy.
U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby also addressed the allegations today at the White House.
India remains a strategic partner, and we're going to continue to work to improve and strengthen that strategic partnership with India. At the same time, we take this very seriously, and we're glad to see that the Indians are too, by announcing their own efforts to investigate this.
Okay, here to discuss these revelations is Roland Paris. He's the director of the University of Ottawa's Graduate School of Public and International Affairs, and Professor Paris previously served as a foreign policy advisor to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Roland Paris, good to see you again.
You too.
I want to get to India's response and John Kirby's comments in just a second, but what's your initial reaction to what was spelled out in this pretty stunning indictment?
It is stunning, and for your viewers who don't usually read indictments, I actually encourage you just to download it.
It's only 15 pages, it's worth it.
No, it is extraordinary, the level of detail. It's hard to believe, and if the evidence that the prosecutors say they have holds up in court, it really is damning. It directly links the Indian government, or at least an Indian government agent, and it establishes this connection between the Canadian murder and the disrupted plot in the United States. It is stunning.
So yeah. I mean, it's the Indian agent who reached out to an alleged drug dealer to try to arrange an assassination, reportedly, and he ended up reaching out to someone who was a confidential source for law enforcement, who hooked him up with a drug enforcement agent who acted as an undercover hitman.
I mean, they don't make this stuff up.
Yeah, it read like a movie script. But so India, you heard there, it's a matter of concern, is what they say. They've launched an inquiry into these allegations, a move we've heard the U.S. say they welcome. Does the government of India have a real interest in getting to the truth here?
Well, they haven't so far. They've been dodging and denying the whole time. It's taken the U.S. indictment to get them to the point of even saying that there's going to be an investigation. But I think that they understand that this is the beginning of a judicial process, and more of this information is going to be coming out. And they can probably expect, I mean, there is an active criminal investigation taking place in British Columbia, that there might be a similar prosecution in Canada too. So they are going to have to investigate, they're going to have to explain, and they're going to have to hold some people accountable, because if this evidence is true, there's only two options. Either there was a criminal plot by the government of India to assassinate multiple people in North America who are citizens of those countries, Canada, the United States, or they have a rogue agent. Either way, there needs to be an explanation, there needs to be accountability.
Yeah, and neither one, I mean, one is obviously worse, but neither of those explanations is good. But what's interesting to note, Roland, is they're taking the U.S. way more seriously than they took Canada, India, that is. When Justin Trudeau made his allegations in the House of Commons that day, now I know there's an indictment with laid out detail and a suggestion that they have phone and video evidence and all kinds of data to back this up, but do you think the U.S. entering into this will change India's posture towards Canada potentially because of what was laid out here?
Well, it certainly helps Canada. You know, it's much easier for India both to deny Canada's allegations and to take retaliatory measures against Canada, as they have. But with the United States, it's too important a relationship for them to risk. At the same time, you know, the extension of the clip, you had the Indian spokesperson there. He went on and said, and continued to make the distinction between Canada and the United States, continued to take shots at Canada. It is a sign that in this new world, Canada is much more vulnerable than we used to be to retaliation. I used to say by emboldened authoritarian regimes, now by even India, a democratic country. And so it definitely helps for Canada to have the United States out front on this and to be taking the attention away from Canada.
It's interesting the challenge India poses, right? Because it is a democracy, but there have been authoritarian tendencies recently under the Modi regime, and it's criticized for significant human rights abuses. And now we have alleged assassination plots in the US and in Canada, all while the West is relying on India to be a counterweight against China. How do you approach the Indo-Pacific strategy when that's the guy you're relying on to help you?
Yeah, this is just like one example of how complicated foreign policy and international affairs have become. But you're right. You know, by any measure, and there are a whole bunch of organizations out there that measure democracy, levels of human rights, measures of press freedom, and India's been tracking down on all of those things. But at the same time, there is a strategic interest that you heard John Kirby express about having India as a strategic partner in the region in relation to China. So you heard John Kirby's remarks. That was trying to thread a needle. And to some extent, it seems clear now that more evidence is coming out that both the United States and Canada have been trying to give India an off-ramp on this. They don't want this to completely dominate the relationship. They spoke to India privately. They wanted this investigation to begin with. Even Melanie Joly last month gave a speech and said, listen, this is something we have to deal with as Canadian sovereignty, but we also know this is a much longer and older relationship with India.
Well, we even saw that with the Prime Minister's reaction to this yesterday, because when he did what he did in Parliament that day, people's jaws dropped.
Yep.
And then there's a lot of rush to punditry that, oh, he's trying to juice his polls and all these sorts of things. He could have come out and kind of gloated yesterday with the big I told you so, but instead it was, you know, we take it very seriously. We look forward to the investigation. We want India to cooperate with the investigation. That suggests that off-ramp strategy that you're talking about.
I think so, and I think that that's been happening since day one. Because we know that not just senior Canadian officials, security officials, we knew that before. What we found out yesterday was that the two most senior officials, intelligence officials in the United States, had also been traveling to India in the last few months. And you just know that what they're trying to do is impress upon the Indian government how seriously the United States and Canada take this, and to get the Indian government to take some responsibility so that they can manage this. But one thing is clear here, and this is not a partisan remark. The Prime Minister has been vindicated through these allegations. He said there were credible allegations. Well, there they are in black and white, and they look more than credible today.
Yes, and the thing that is striking also from the indictment, which again, if you can find it, you can read it, the man Gupta, who's the alleged drug trafficker who was accused of trying to murder for hire, promised more jobs in the future. Right, so this is not a one-off in British Columbia and a potential one-off in New York. There was, it seemed like, a persistent campaign at least being offered to these people. So given that, how do you approach India? But this off-ramp strategy seems very clear. How do you navigate them on getting your diplomats back in, maintaining visas, you know, expanding trade? Because, you know, we've got 2 million people in Canada who trace their lineage back there. There's business ties, cultural ties. How do you approach this as a government with all of this?
Well, you know, it's one thing for us to talk about whether democracy has been sliding in India, but that's what's happening inside India. When India reaches out and allegedly conducts an assassination campaign, that's a really big deal. And I think at this point it's up to the Indians. They can either take this seriously and conduct an investigation, or they do risk having this issue blow up the relationships. Yeah. And so how do you deal with this? You deal with this by putting pressure on India, telling them this isn't going to go away. Now, India really cares about the relationship with the United States in particular. So it wants to find a way to manage this. So with the American pressure now on India, hopefully there'll be some results.
Roland Paris, always appreciate it. That's Roland Paris, Director of the University of Ottawa's Graduate School of Public and International Affairs. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.